Hey everyone, welcome in. Ever feel like you're just scratching the surface of your true potential?
Yeah, like something's holding you back.
Exactly. Today we're diving deep into Ernest Holmes' The Science of Mind to see if we can unlock that inner powerhouse.
Great book. Even though it was published back in 1926, it was way ahead of its time.
Right, so we're going to break down how its wisdom can be applied to your life today.
What I find fascinating about Holmes is how he blends spirituality with the sheer power of thought.
Yeah, he does that well.
He uses these vivid, almost fable-like stories and analogies to make these really complex concepts surprisingly clear.
And memorable.
Yes.
Okay, so what's the first key to unlocking this inner power then?
Well, Holmes starts with this idea of the triune unity, which is basically this three-part system that makes up our very being: spirit, soul, and body.
Spirit, soul, and body.
Okay. Think of it like this.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Spirit is the pure, self-aware essence, like the first cause, what some might call God. It's that I am energy, that self-existent force within us.
Okay, so I'm getting I am that I am vibes here, like from the Bible.
Exactly. It's that pure consciousness. Then there's the soul, which Holmes says is basically the subconscious mind.
Okay.
This is where it gets really interesting. He says the subconscious is governed by the law of cause and effect, which some traditions call karma.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Essentially, whatever we plant in our subconscious, whether we're aware of it or not, will eventually grow and bear fruit.
So if our thoughts are like seeds, we want to make sure we're planting the right kind. But where does the body fit into all of this?
The body is like the physical manifestation of both the spirit and soul. Holmes uses the analogy of a river, always changing, always flowing, yet the indwelling spirit that I am at our core remains constant.
So even though our bodies are constantly changing, that inner essence, that spirit remains the same. That's kind of reassuring. But how does understanding this triune unity help us unlock our potential?
That's the heart of Holmes's philosophy, really. He argues that once we grasp this interconnectedness, we can break free from limitations we often impose on ourselves. Things like sickness, poverty, unhappiness. Holmes suggests these aren't just bad luck, but often stem from our own thinking.
Wait, are you saying that my thoughts can actually influence my physical health or like my financial situation?
He's not saying these things aren't real. He's saying that we have more power to influence them than we realize.
Okay, that's an interesting distinction.
It all comes down to what we believe to be true about ourselves and the world around us.
So instead of feeling like I'm at the mercy of circumstance, I actually have more agency than I thought. That's pretty empowering.
Exactly. And this is where we get to the true science of mind. It's about understanding the laws of this deeper mental realm so we can work with them consciously to create the life we desire.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we tap into that power? What's the secret sauce?
Holmes is very clear on this point. Your thoughts create your reality.
Whoa, okay. I've heard that before, but it's always felt a little vague. How does that actually work?
Think of it like this. The universe operates like a limitless checking account, what Holmes calls the universal subjective mind. Your thoughts are like withdrawals from that account.
So I can withdraw anything, health, wealth, happiness, as long as I believe those funds are available. I like that analogy.
That's the key. It's not just about wishful thinking. It's about shifting our entire belief system to align with what we want to create. He illustrates this with a story about four unemployed men, let's call them A, B, C, and D, who all seek help from a practitioner of the science of mind.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more.
So this practitioner, he gives each of these guys the same treatment, right?
Okay.
Affirming that there's nothing but activity and abundance, that each one of them is divinely employed, that kind of thing.
So did they all become CEOs overnight? What happened?
Not quite. Here's where it gets interesting. So they all eventually get jobs, but at different pay grades.
Oh, okay.
A, who had the lowest expectations, landed a job paying $15 a week. B got $50. C, $75. And D, the one with the highest expectations,
Yeah.
gets a $100 a week position.
Wow. So even though they received the same treatment, their individual beliefs and expectations played a huge role in the outcome. That's wild.
Exactly. It all comes back to the idea that you can only manifest what you can conceive of. Your thoughts are like the blueprint for your reality.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually put this into practice? Am I supposed to just sit around and think positive thoughts all day? What does Holmes suggest?
Well, he talks a lot about the power of visualization. So let's say, for example, you're dreaming of a new home.
Okay.
He'd say, don't just wish for it, but like build it in your mind. See it clearly, walk through the rooms, feel what it would be like to actually live there.
Oh, wow. I can see how that would be powerful. Almost like you're sending a direct order to the universe.
Exactly. And as you're visualizing, you reinforce it with affirmations, saying things like, it is, it is, it is, declaring it as already done, even if you can't see it in the physical world yet.
So it's about training my mind to focus on what I want rather than dwelling on what I don't want. No more doom scrolling for me.
You've got it.
Hmm.
Holmes emphasizes that you could never even look at what you don't want to experience. Don't give it any mental energy at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. This really makes me think about the language we use, both internally and out loud. Like if we're constantly complaining or worrying, we're just reinforcing those negative patterns.
Absolutely. Your words have immense power. Remember, your life is basically a mirror reflecting back what you project into it.
Okay, so we've got the triune unity, the power of thought, visualization, affirmations. Is there anything else we need to unlock this inner powerhouse? What about intuition?
Holmes talks about tapping into our intuition, what he calls that still small voice within. He compares it to, like, the instincts we see in animals, actually.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison. How so?
Well, think about it. Just like an animal instinctively knows where to find food and shelter, we have this inner guidance system that's connected to something much larger than ourselves. We just have to learn to listen to it.
That makes sense. But how do we differentiate between our intuition and just random thoughts? How do we know we're tapping into that deeper wisdom?
Well, that's where it's important to understand the distinction between what Holmes calls mysticism and psychism.
Okay, this is where I sometimes get a little lost. What's the difference?
So mysticism, as Holmes describes it, is about connecting with that higher reality, that universal intelligence.
Right.
Psychism, on the other hand, can be more about picking up on other people's thoughts or even being influenced by them, almost like mental noise.
So how do we avoid getting caught up in that psychic drama and make sure we're tuning into our own inner wisdom?
Holmes says that true intuition is distinct from those psychic impressions. Think of psychic impressions as trying to control you, while intuition is more of a gentle guidance, a nudge in the right direction.
Okay.
He uses the story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead to illustrate this point.
Okay, I'm really interested to hear how this story ties in.
Okay, so Holmes points out that Jesus didn't just forcefully will Lazarus back to life.
Right.
First, he acknowledged the presence of divine power. Then he unified his will with it. And finally, he spoke the word with authority.
So it's less about trying to force things to happen and more about aligning ourselves with that higher power and trusting in its wisdom.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And this leads us to another fascinating aspect of the book, the concept of libido,
Okay.
and how it plays into this idea of personal power.
Now, when I hear libido, I usually think of Freud and, well.
Right, but Holmes isn't just talking about sexual energy here.
Hmm.
He uses libido to describe the driving force behind all human activity.
Okay.
It's our vital life force, the energy that fuels our desires, ambitions, our creativity.
So it's like the engine that propels us forward in life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like any powerful engine, it needs an outlet. If this energy gets bottled up, whether it's creative urges, ambitions, or, yes, even sexual desires, it can create all sorts of mental and physical blocks.
So repression isn't the answer.
Not according to Holmes.
Yeah.
He argues that repressing these natural urges can actually lead to illness, unhappiness, and a whole lot of inner turmoil.
That makes a lot of sense. So what's the solution? How do we channel this libido in a healthy, productive way?
So Holmes talks about two key processes here,
Okay.
transmutation and sublimation.
Okay.
Transmutation is about redirecting that energy into something constructive.
Hmm.
For example, let's say you're feeling a lot of anger.
Right.
Instead of bottling it up or lashing out, you could channel that energy into exercise, creative expression, or something that allows you to move through it.
That's a great strategy. And what about sublimation? How is that different?
Sublimation is about taking that raw energy and transforming it into a higher expression. It's like taking that powerful force and refining it into something even more potent. Holmes uses this analogy. First, the man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the man.
Okay, I've heard that one before. I think I see where you're going with this.
It's about how easily we can become controlled by our desires if we don't master them. Sublimation is about taking that libido, that driving force, and consciously using it to fuel our growth, our creativity, our connection with something bigger than ourselves.
So it's about becoming the master of our energy rather than being enslaved by it. This is
Yeah,
really powerful stuff.
it really is. And it ties directly into another key point Holmes makes, the importance of developing a magnetic personality.
Okay, so we're not just talking about, like, physical attractiveness here.
Not at all. Holmes believes that a truly magnetic personality emanates from an inner radiance that you cultivate.
Okay, I like that.
He talks about specific traits that draw people in, things like wholesomeness, self-confidence, emotional control, and a deep sense of spirituality.
So it's about embodying those qualities we admire in others, but it all starts from within.
Precisely. It all begins with that inner work, with understanding the power of our own minds and how to harness that power effectively.
Wow. This has been an incredible deep dive so far. We've covered so much ground, from the triune unity to the power of thought, and even how to master our inner energy. Is there anything else Holmes touches on that we should explore before we wrap up? This has been mind-blowing, but I feel like we've just scratched the surface of what's possible with this whole science of mind thing.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much more to uncover.
So what else does Holmes explore?
Well, he emphasizes that, cultivating a magnetic personality isn't about like becoming someone you're not.
Right, right.
It's about expressing your most authentic self.
I love that. It's not about trying to fit into some mold, but rather about becoming the best, most radiant version of ourselves, right?
Exactly. And when we do that inner work, when we understand the power of our thoughts and learn to master our energy, that's when we truly step into our power.
This whole conversation has been incredibly empowering, honestly. So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into the science of mind, what's the main takeaway, you think? What's that one thing our listeners can walk away with?
I think the most important message Holmes conveys is that you are not a victim of circumstance.
Hmm.
You have the power to shape your reality
Okay, yeah.
through conscious thought and a deeper understanding of your own nature.
That is such a powerful message. It's not about wishing for things to be different, but like understanding that we have the power within us to make those changes happen.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we are not just physical beings, but spiritual beings
Yeah.
having a human experience.
Right, right.
And that realization comes with immense responsibility.
That's a great point. If our thoughts are really that potent, if we truly have the ability to shape our reality, then what responsibility do we have to ourselves and others in how we use that power?
That's the question, isn't it? It's a
Oh,
question that's maybe even more relevant today than it was back then. In a world with so much information, instant communication, our thoughts and energy have this, like, ripple effect.
wow. Yeah, that's a powerful thought to leave us with. This has been an amazing journey through the science of mind. Hopefully, it sparks some new insights for you all. And hey, maybe even inspired you to explore Holmes's work a little more on your own. Remember, the power to shape your reality is in your hands. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.